dirt roads. Every house had a porch. Every porch had a swing. Late in the evening, they'd sit out in that swing and just wait for somebody to come along and sit a spell. And they talked. No telephone, no television. I think we got a newspaper once a month. Kids, when I tell this story to them, they say, "What did you do?" We talked. No texting, no cell phones, no phone at all. And we had a relationship. And you know what? I have kept up with a lot of the people, most of the people that grew up in Shankleville. I have never heard of one going to prison. Never. I've never heard of one getting hung up on drugs. Hey, if a girl got pregnant in Shankleville, she was in big trouble. That just wasn't heard of. So that's where I grew up, in Shankleville. And when I was about 14 years old, a minister came to pastor our church named Reverend Truvillian, and he had a daughter named Ruby. And I saw her, and we stood on the porch, on the steps of the church and held hands for 4 years. Going in whenever church started and coming again next Sunday. But that was the way we courted. We got married. First of all, I talked to my daddy about getting married. I said, "Dad, I'm thinking about getting married." He was a carpenter. And he took his work seriously, just as serious as he did giving the advice to his sons. When I told Dad I was thinking of getting married, he put his hammer down and looked at me right in the eyes. He said, "Son, I want you to know that's for me. And I want you to know that whatever's yours when you get married, half of it's hers." Well, I believed everything Dad said. Always did. So it was a few months later that we did get married. And when we went to the wedding, I had $10 in the world, not in the bank, in the world. I paid the preacher, and I gave Ruby half of my $10. So we had $5 each. We went to church the next day on our honeymoon. And we got to show off a little bit now, so each of us put $1 in an offering plate. So now we're down to 8. So we started life with each other and $8. Okay, but Jim had less than that when he ran away from that plantation. And he didn't even have Winnie. He was going to look for her. So with that kind of a backdrop, is there no surprise that 6 months later we bought a house? It didn't cost as much as some of them now, but it was a house. And it was white. It was painted. Boy, we were proud. And about 11 months later, along came Barbara. And we've been together ever since. It's almost 65 years now. We stayed in Shankleville and around Shankleville for about another year or so. But there just wasn't enough work there to really keep us going, so we moved to Orange, Texas. About 65 miles away, about 22,000 people. That was a city. But we took the same things to Orange that we brought from Shankleville. A desire to succeed. A willingness to work. Whatever our kids were involved in, we were involved. We thought at that time that that's what parents were from. I don't know where the idea came along that you aren't supposed to look after your own kids, but we thought you were. So when they were in Girl Scouts, we were too. Boy Scouts, we were there. Time for them to start getting some formal training. There was no kindergarten in Orange for colored. So we established one. We found a little lady who had been forced to retire from the school, who had a big backyard, and we formed a PTA with other parents, and we bought playground equipment, and we decided on what it would take to how much a week to keep her going, and we established a kindergarten. And we've been And all the time, we were just as involved in our church, in community activities. Orange was a small enough town where you know everybody knew everybody. And we enjoyed living there. Things went well for us there. In my book, you will find me telling about some of the unpleasant things that happened. But there again, it was unpleasant when Jim was walking across the woods. I mean, and we managed it. Oh, I remember it was such a shock to me when I went to work in the post office as a letter carrier in 1949. And you know, the post office in a small town was the symbol of government in that town. I went to work in the post office, and the first day I walked in, they pointed a water fountain to me that was painted black and said, "You be sure you drink there." Those were things that were difficult to take. But hey, 98 cents an hour, that was the best job in town. What do? You don't run out on it. You stay and try to change those conditions. There were some of the things that happened to me back in my childhood that it even hurts me to talk about now. But I can remember them and compare it to today and be grateful for where we are. I mentioned my dad, as I always do. He was the greatest man I ever knew. Smartest sixth grade dropout in the world. I went to town with Dad when I was about 9 or 10. We didn't go often. We stayed in Shanksville. But I went with Dad that Saturday, and I don't know why he took me. But we were walking across the courthouse lawn. And there were 3 or 4 guys with big hats, big belt buckles, chewing tobacco, and cowboy boots. And they greeted Daddy jovially. They called themselves being friends, and they were. They liked him. I don't know what they called that, some kind of nickname. And one of them raised his foot and kicked Daddy right in the seat. And all of them laughed and laughed. And it was a joke. It wasn't a joke to me. Worst thing of all was that Daddy laughed too. Well, in those days, I later learned, his laughing was an act of survival. If he hadn't laughed, I don't know whether he would have been around much longer or not. I do recall the sheriff coming out to his house once and shaking his finger in his face and telling him he better not vote. So those kinds of things we remember